problem.
All right. Well, welcome to Senior Living Foresight's Tech Tuesday podcast. We're super excited to dig into the topic of data today. And we know that that's top of mind for a lot of providers. So we're super excited to dig into that. A lot of senior living organizations, in fact, I'll say most senior living organizations are sitting on more data than they've ever had before and getting less out of it than they'd like. In 2025, Leading Edge Cast survey found that data analytics tools now ranks as the top technology investment priority among senior living organizations, surpassing even information and communication technology infrastructure for the first time. So what separates an organization that can actually use its data from one just hoarding it? We're going to unpack that today. But first, we've got our regular intro that Jada is going to play for us.
Hey guys, Steve Moran here.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Tech Tuesday, the Senior Living Foresight podcast that airs every Tuesday to unpack all things senior living tech. Your eyes are not playing a trick on you. I am not Steve Moran. My name is Joe Velderman, and I'm pinch hitting this week for Steve Moran as he's out enjoying some well-deserved vacation and hopefully some rest and relaxation. It's a great privilege for me to fill in and try to do my best to fill Steve's big shoes this week on Tech Tuesday. And to hopefully add a little bit more energy and some intelligence to our discussion today, I'm super grateful to have a dear friend of mine on the podcast. Welcome, Kory Nadeau, Vice President of Information Technology from Presbyterian Homes of Minnesota. Welcome, Kory.
Hey, great to be here, Joe. Thanks for inviting me and bringing me into this.
Yeah, no, thank you for hopping on. This is going to be really fun. Kory, would you mind just taking a minute of talking a little bit about your organization? I know you guys are in a lot of different ministry areas at Pres Home, and then kick us off and tell us a little bit about your data journey over the past couple of years at Pres Homes.
Sure, no problem. So yeah, I'm with Presbyterian Homes and Services. We're out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but we operate in several different states. We've got communities in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, down in Texas. We've got partnerships in Washington State, and we're continuing to grow. And as we continue to grow, we're looking for opportunities to make it easier to grow. And we were looking at some of our systems that we had in place, and we realized that us, like most operators that are out there, have many different systems that are speaking different languages, that are tracking data individually, and that data is not talking to each other. And as we look to grow from 60 communities to many more than 60 communities, we needed to find a way to fix that problem. So we looked at our systems, and we saw that we had several different medical record systems. We had a different CRM product. We had a donor, foundational product. None of them referred to the people we serve the same. Our data was siloed, like I said, everywhere else. And we were looking for a way to try and get that data all pulled together. And how could we do that? How could we make it so that we can leverage the data, not only for our own growth, but to know our residents better? How can we better serve them moving forward? And then also by getting that data together, it would empower our staff to know more about our residents as they're going, and it would be a win across the entire continuum. So that's kind of how we were looking at things, is we got all these siloed data, and how do we get this data put together in a useful format to make everybody that's involved in this entire process better off.
Yeah, I love that framing, Kory. Thank you so much for that. It was so interesting. You're bringing back memories for me from when I was on the operations side of things. I remember doing a pretty regular, I called it my needs and dreams meetings with a lot of the executive directors and managers from different operational departments. I would try to get together with them pretty regularly and ask them, what are your technology needs? And if time and effort and budget were no issue, what would be some big dreams that you have, right? And I vividly remember a conversation with one of our executive directors. She said, if there was a way for me to not have to have 17 different Chrome tabs open while I'm trying to prepare for a resident meeting or for a family meeting or something like that, that would be awesome. We have all this data on people, residents, family members, future residents, team members, like you said, but it lives in all these different data silos and all these different enterprise applications, and there's no real way to bring it all together. So I love what you just described there, Kory. I think you guys, being a nonprofit faith-based organization, always have mission at the top of mind. And one of the things that you said, wanting to get to know your residents better, I think, really leans into that mission mindset that you have. But there's also a lot of value to that from an operational standpoint too, right? So kudos to you guys for recognizing that and really wanting to lean into that. Help me unpack some of the operational pain points a little bit more.
Sure.
How did you guys make data a strategic priority? Not just, we want to be data driven, but what are some of the specific frustrations that caused you to say, hey, we've got a big opportunity to become more data driven as an organization here?
Yeah, well, it gets kind of down to just the basics. We've got a full continuum of services, everything from independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing facilities. And in order to go from one of those value streams, from independent living to assisted living, or assisted living to a skilled nursing facility, we had to discharge somebody from a software and readmit them into another software product. And none of the data flowed automatically. That was a pain, not just for the resident, but also for our staff in trying to make sure we got everything going on. So that was one of the pain points, just very easily and upfront. The other piece is that because these systems are siloed and they're different, the residents were manually created in each of these systems by different individuals. So sometimes, Joe, you might have been known as Joe Velderman in one, you might have been known as Joey Velderman in another, you might have been Joseph Velderman in third. And we had no way to tie all those records together to say, what is the true journey of Joe Velderman coming through Pres Homes? So those are kind of the pain points that we target and say, how can we make it so that we have a much better view of our resident and the journey they're going to and through at Pres Homes, and that we can help guide them through it and make it as frictionless as possible for them. So it just flows for them easily. And then in counter to that, for our staff, it just flows for them. They don't have to re-enter all this stuff. And we don't have to ask a resident 5 times what their favorite activities are. It's data that follows them to every system. So those are some very tangible things, everyday things that were taking place that we looked at data as being an opportunity for us to fix and resolve.
Yeah. And I'm curious, to what degree you guys sort of took into perspective the consumer, we'll call them mindset, right? And consumer might be residents, it might be future residents, it might be family members. But, from my perspective, as a consumer, I think about a brand as, having a lot of continuity across that brand, despite the fact that brand might have a lot of different service lines, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if that sort of played a role in your motivation as well.
Well, it did. As you mentioned, we like many others have a lot of different service lines, and we have different divisions that offer different services. We have a home and community-based services line that operates under the brand of Optage. We have Presbyterian Homes Services, which is our parent, the company that for all the communities, but each community has its own name as well. So kind of having that continuity across everything was important, and making sure that the prospects or consumers that are coming in and taking a look at know that we're all one Pres Homes. We are Presbyterian Homes and Services. We are here to serve you and or your loved one as you enter the doors, and we're going to take care of you across all of these different value streams that we have.
That's awesome. So how many different disparate data platforms did you find when you started putting pen to paper? Well,
it's a lot. I would say we had 4 different medical record systems that were in place specifically. Then we had a different sales and marketing solution. We have a meals solution that's separate. We have a resident engagement solution that's separate. All of these things. So there's 7 or 8 right there that just had different data, that had different inputs going into them that were siloed data. And then you add on top of that additional integrations that are coming in, the feeds that you've got coming and going from different systems, pharmacies, primary cares, those kinds of things. And it just got to be, dozens of different systems that were out there. We now have moved it forward, and we went through a deep study with an external partner that came in and said, what are we going to do? How do we make this work moving forward? And one of the recommendations that they came up with that we presented to our board in 2025 was the concept of getting an integration platform as a service, an iPaaS, a partner to kind of lie in the middle so that we can integrate all of these systems that don't talk to each other into a single orchestration layer, so that then we can start to get all that data, but then not only get the data, but we have to then relate that data to each other so that we can share it between the systems. And so we started that effort in 2025. We're a long ways down that journey at this point. We've got 8 different systems fully integrated with demographic data coming in. And we're getting to the point now where we're starting to do the data transformations and starting to take Joe Velderman and become Joe Velderman across all of those and make some data consistency across all of the different systems, and starting to see some real, fruit to our labor, if you would.
That is super cool, and I love the fact that you introduced the concept iPaaS. I want to take a minute or two and just kind of unpack that for folks that may not have heard that term before. Before I moved to Florida, I lived in Illinois, Indiana area, and iPaaS was a toll system for going on the toll roads. Right? It was the Illinois Pass. That's IPASS. This that we're talking about is IPAAS, which is Integration Platform as a Service. And Kory, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, but talk about some of the use cases that you have found for connecting data points across different enterprise applications using the iPaaS already.
Sure. One of the very first ones that we did, just kind of testing out, was going into our CRM product. And when a resident or prospect turned from a prospect to a resident, we took that demographic data and made sure that it was clean. And we automatically write that data now to our foundational product, which is the donation, the donor, the fundraising side of it. And that's just automating that process. That process in the past was all done manually. So we had somebody who was manually going into the sales product, see who was turning into a resident that day across all of our communities, manually putting that into their product. That's now an automated process. We also are taking that into the admissions process. So somebody comes in, they turn from a prospect to a resident in our sales product. We're now able to take that data, and we will soon be writing that into our medical record systems instead of having that all be a manual process, which today is, based on a spreadsheet and email. Right? This person is a resident. Email that spreadsheet over, or a link to the spreadsheet over to the person in billing. They set them up in the billing system. Email it to the nurse so they can do their assessment. Put them into the medical record system, and so forth. That's all going to be automated here in the very near future, which is going to save time. It's going to make the data a lot cleaner. So data efficacy is one of the big paramounts that we are trying to focus on in all of this, making sure that our data is clean, it's consistent across everything, and kind of just focusing in on the data governance, data security side of things, and making sure that we have things similar and the same across all of them.
Yeah. So I love sort of the focus being data integrity or data efficacy, right? But you also mentioned time savings, and I'm curious if you have some metrics on time savings that you're already experiencing as a result of the iPaaS.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of goals and hopes for the savings, right? The one that I mentioned today, where it's all the prospects that are turning into residents across 61 communities automatically being written into that donor solution that we have. Our estimate was that it was taking roughly a full-time equivalent per month for people to go through and manually look through all of the different communities that are there. And are there any people that moved in today? And manually then take that information and write it into, or copy and paste it into the donation platform. So by automating that, we believe that we have now taken that full-time equivalent, allowed that person to focus their energy somewhere else, because us, like everybody else in the industry, we are not overstaffed in any way, shape, or form. There's always enough work for people to do. Right. Allowing those people now to focus their energies on different activities, spending more time with the potential donors instead of manually creating those records. So we think that the very first one is saving us an FTE.
Wow. That's incredible. So you've got this sort of integration engine that has all these defined rules in it that's running, I'll call it behind the curtain, right? And it's creating efficiency for your organization. But even more importantly, it's creating consistently clean data across all the different platforms. And so let's kind of talk about, the data moving around the circle from one enterprise application to another application, to then moving the data through a funnel and putting it all into the same place.
Sure.
And I think, we've already kind of touched on it with the data integrity and the data efficacy piece of it a little bit. But I think, what you guys have done with the integration platform as a service, the iPaaS, is really helping to not create what I like to call a data swamp. It's creating an actual data lake, right? There's cleanliness to it. Right. That Joe Velderman is Joe Velderman across all these different platforms because of how they're connected, and you're not having to do a bunch of ETL work on the back end to try to create continuity between Joe and Joey and Joseph Velderman, right?
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the data lake here for a second.
Sure.
And I know that you see a lot of benefit in that. You guys have already done some incredible things with regards to reporting and analytics and dashboards and all of that kind of stuff. But, there's a lot of aspirations with the data from an artificial intelligence perspective, I think, too, right? Yeah. So help us understand, what was the motivation for the data lake to start with, and what's the journey been like so far, and where do you guys see yourself going with the data lake in the future?
Sure. So starting with that integration platform, we knew that we were going to be getting a lot of data, and just getting a lot of data from all these different systems doesn't really do anything by itself. It just gives you a bunch of data that doesn't know how to integrate, to talk to each other, to relate to each other. So in doing that, I was blessed enough here to be able to hire some really, really great people. I have wonderful staff of a senior systems or software engineer, and I have a data scientist on our side. So when we've been building this since the beginning, as we're pulling data into our data lake, we've been taking the disparate data and creating what we used to refer to as, just doing like a relational database, right? We're making matrices so that the data knows how to talk to each other. Now there's a fancy term that people are using out there calling it data ontology, right? It's taking all of the disparate system that means the data that means the same thing in two different systems, and getting them to know what that is, because AI on top of the data isn't going to do anything unless it can relate it. So within one system, we might have a patient ID. Within another system, we have a customer ID. Within the third system, it's a resident. And last one, it's a medical record number. We took all of those things and we put in relational information on the back end of the data so that we know what that all means, and it ties to a master ID for a resident. We did the same on the apartments, the units. All of the different ways that we refer to those now tied to a master unit ID. Now that we have all that data kind of tied together with this ontology, we can leverage it across systems so that we know when we get to the point where we have AI on top of it and we say, tell me, has anybody moved from independent living to assisted living? It knows where to go look. It knows that you got to look for patients, for residents, for medical records. All these things, tie it to the unit number, which is tied to independent living or assisted living, and bring all that back together by just having a natural language query. So we're in the process of building all of that data now, getting it all put together so we can actually utilize the data coming together, because or else it's a swamp, as you said. If you just put everything in, you have a data swamp. By putting it in and architecting it in a way that it's relatable to each other, that you can put multiple systems that talk to each other, then you have a lake where you can, get useful data out of it. You can layer AI eventually on top of it, and you can start to use it to help drive business decisions moving forward.
Man, that was really, really well said. And I think you introduced our audience to a new term that many people might not be familiar with. And so I think it might be fair for us to take 2 minutes and unpack the word ontology a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, when I first heard the word ontology, it was probably only about 9 months ago, something like that. And I thought that they said oncology. And I was like, whoa, no, this isn't about, treating people with cancer. Ontology is something totally different. And, I think it's something that we're going to hear a lot more about over the next year, because it is increasingly important in terms of how artificial intelligence is able to synthesize a mountain of data that lives inside of, a data lake. But even more so, it has everything to do with the efficiency that AI can process that data. So I'll take a stab at my definition of ontology, Kory, and then you can kind of elaborate on it from your perspective. But, when I think about putting a piece of data into a data lake, I want there to be some sort of relationship between that data point that I put into the data lake, whether it be a person's name, a vital statistic, a point of sale transaction, a biography, whatever it is. I want that data that goes into the data lake to understand how that data point relates to every other data point that's in the data lake, right? So how does a new work order going in from my work order management system relate to a person's name? And how does that person's name and that work order relate to what they ordered for lunch yesterday? And how does that lunch order relate to what their blood pressure is this afternoon, right? Because I think, at the end of the day, to really get that holistic view of a resident and to know them better, like you said, we have to understand the relationship between all these different moving parts and pieces that are happening inside of the data lake. So I don't know if I did that justice or not, Kory, but I'll let you kind of take it and see if you have anything to add to it.
You did, and it's really what you said. And I go back to being kind of an old school, SQL guy. In the relational databases, we used to have primary keys that could talk to each other. And the same is true now, because AI on top of a data swamp isn't going to do anything because it doesn't have any business reasoning on how to connect that data that's in the swamp. By doing the relational items that you just defined there, Joe, with ontology, we're giving it context, we're giving it meaning and reasoning that it can then use to tie all of this stuff together as we move forward. And that's we have to do some work. The AI isn't going to do all the work for us. We still have to have some thought and engineering to go in the behind the scenes to make things give us good output. Because if we don't have the good reasoning, the bad data is going to give us bad AI output, and none of us want that. Right. So we have to try to think up front as much as we can to try to tie this stuff together to make sure that the output we're going to get from AI and future AI is as clean and accurate as possible, because we're dealing with residents here. We're dealing with, and if we get to the employee side, we're dealing with our employees' data. It has to be accurate. We can't have it hallucinating and giving bad information. We need it to be accurate. We need it to be based on facts, and we need it to relate to the right information across systems.
I love the way that you put that. My experience working with data and AI is now just, over the past 12 months or so has been remarkable. I think AI is kind of like adding octane booster to, or I'm sorry, data is like adding octane booster to AI, right? When you can give it, when you can expose it to information in a data lake that it's never had access to before, it's like instantly more intelligent because of that data, and it's able to produce responses. But to your point, if you're putting a whole bunch of garbage into the data lake and inconsistent data into the data lake, The AI doesn't know that. It doesn't know that it's inconsistent. It doesn't know that it's wrong. It doesn't know that it's garbage. And so it's going to very confidently put the data that it has access to in the data lake, and it's going to, very confidently come up with a result or an answer or a response based off of that incorrect data. So you're right. We do have to kind of go through a process of cleaning and making sure that the data in the data lake is well represented and well relationalized with all the other data that's in the data lake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we kind of moved on to the AI topic here a little bit. Help us understand. You've got this great iPaaS. You're putting data into a data lake. You've got this great ontology to all of your data. I think you're doing all the things right so far. Have you guys been able to experience any really cool breakthroughs with AI, or do you have some aspirational breakthroughs with AI in the context of your now more mature data platform?
I would say we're still in the aspirational phase, to be completely honest. We're still in the process of getting all of our data in and kind of seeing what it's going to do. But the aspirational things that we're going to get are trying to do some predictive things. And I'm not pulling healthcare data in quite yet. It's just all demographic data. But as we get all that demographic data in and we do start to get some information from the healthcare side, we're going to be able to do some predictions. I'm not talking healthcare predictions and care planning predictions, but predictability about when the independent living residents might need to move to assisted living, or assisted living residents might need to move to memory care and or to a skilled nursing facility. Some of those very tangible things that really help the administration staff within one of our communities to plan and to communicate and to keep the people that are on the waiting list apprised of how things are coming along. So those are some of the very soon things that we're hoping to get out of some of the AI and the data that we have. Once we start being able to layer in some medical information in there, we'll be able to do a lot more as well. But this is kind of the baby steps, I guess, as we're moving into this. It's kind of moving to see what we're going to be able to get to.
That's great. That's great. And any work so far or aspirations going forward from a sales and marketing perspective, being able to use like prospect data from a sales and marketing perspective?
There's a lot of opportunity with the data that can go into prospecting. So we have many different lines of business, and I'll just kind of talk of one that we've been talking about recently. Is we also serve meals. Think Meals on Wheels. We serve 30,000 meals a week to people that are in the home and in their houses in the community. That's one business line that we have that's not tied into any other business lines that we have now. But we also have home and community-based services that do home health and do hospice and things along those lines. Those systems are not yet talking. So we're going to be able to now start to tie all that information together from a sales and marketing perspective, possibly connect those people who may not know that there's other service offerings that we can provide and get that information to them in front of them and help make their lives better moving forward.
Yeah. Right data to the right person at the right time so that we can provide the right care in the right place, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. Hey, Kory, thank you so much for hanging out with us for a little bit today and sharing all of the cool things that you guys are working on. Our half hour has gone by pretty quick here, but I would just ask if you've got like one closing thought, maybe a lesson learned or a vision for the future of data in senior living. And we'll leave that as kind of an imparting thought for our audience today.
Sure. I would say that when it comes to your data journey, I think it's been invaluable to find a good business partner to work with to help, because we're 60 communities big, but we don't have all the data expertise in the world. So find a good business partner to work with, focus on getting your data in and making sure that it's clean, and then focus in on that ontology, the relational aspect of the data up front, so you don't just end up with a swamp.
Awesome advice. Thank you so much again. We are right at the top of the hour here. I don't know if I saw any questions come through, but I know Kory and I would love to connect with anybody that might have some questions or want to keep the conversation going. And Jada can put our LinkedIn profiles up there, and I think Kory's even volunteered his email address for anybody that might want to reach out to him from an operator perspective. So let's keep the conversation going on social media or via email. We're happy to stay connected with you. And I'm really, really happy to share with you guys that Steve will be back next week from his vacation, and you won't have to deal with the bench to lead these conversations next week, Tuesday. So thank you so much for joining us. And Jada, go ahead and roll the outro.